opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Shaw Cable Systems or of the station. Through our access policy, we provide the opportunity for community groups and individuals to express their points of view.
Meet the WWE Hall of Famer. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Bret the Hitman Hart, for one day only. Next Saturday from 1 to 4 at Primo's Collectibles in the Garden City.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Primo's Wrestling. My name is Kid Remington. I'm your host, and this is a special show we've got for you in this week and the next coming weeks called Pro Wrestling 101. We're doing something a little bit different. We're interviewing some luminaries. Some of wrestlers that have made their name, I mean, not just in this town, across Canada, across North America, heck, even probably wrestling in Antarctica. We don't know. And we'll find out. We'll ask those questions possibly. Today we're going to interview a true champion, true Canadian, a man who worldwide receives more love, admiration, and respect for the way he conducted himself than by the amount of championships that possibly he's held in his career. He won a ton of titles. That says a lot. 5-time WWF, WWE heavyweight champ, 2-time IC champ, 2-time tag team champion, plus 7 titles in WCW, including 2 championships. So without further ado, may I present the excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret, thanks so much for coming on the show and agreeing to do this.
Sure, nice to be here.
So first question I guess I want to get to here is how are you feeling? Coming in here, everyone knows how your career ended. Everyone knows about your stroke. Things going good?
Well, I got a fractured foot, which is a small thing on the scale of injuries that I've got. But, I'm working my way through that. It's actually been bothering me a long time, this little fracture, and I don't want to talk about it for very long. But I hurt my foot about maybe 3 years ago, and it's gonna be 3 years this June. And I only got diagnosed with a fracture about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's been a long sort of painful process of hobbling around, and
yes.
Hope I get that right. But most of all, I know people worry about my head injuries and my concussion. There's a lot of talk in the press these days about concussions.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like a bona fide expert on concussions, and
okay.
Nobody knows better than me about the coach patting you on the back and telling you to go back out and keep playing.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that for my career. And there's lessons that have been learned from that. I hope there's still a lot of ignorance, like people that think that that you can get back up and play when you can't. And clearly, there's been some strong progress in now that the trainers and the doctors and stuff that are associated with pro sports are really being extra careful, or it seemed to be anyway. And I'm glad for that, because I ended my career on a concussion injury, and I still got problems from it today.
Yes. Now, interestingly enough, like you are in, we're in professional wrestling, where people are taking a lot of bumps, a lot of hits and stuff. But generally, if you're good at your craft, you're trying to protect somebody from getting hit in the head, full stream and stuff. Can you maybe talk about that? Like how realistic is that?
Well, I'm really glad. I'm proud of myself today that I made a career and made a living as a professional wrestler, as opposed to, say, a martial arts or a UFC fighter, who I have infinite respect for. But I'm so glad I didn't have to put myself through that. And the truth is, all those blows to the head, when you see in the fights, when I watch UFC and I see them, obviously it's a KO punch and the guy goes down and the referee's a few steps behind, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 really hard shots to the face or the head. I find those really hard to watch. Yeah. Especially, I don't know how a man can hit another man that's defenseless with such ferocity and such viciousness without any consequence, without even any remorse, or doesn't seem to bother their consciences at all. I know that's the name of the game. It's a tough profession, but all those things, you're going to see, I think, down the road, a lot of really serious brain injuries in UFC, and I think boxing maybe is another one that's good. I know from my own personal experience, I've been around a long time and met a lot of old wrestlers in the dressing rooms that come in and say hi. Wrestlers in their 70s and 80s, and Freddie Blassie and guys like that would come in. Always sharp as a bell. They can remember everything. They talk about stuff. They remember the gyms they used to go to and who they worked with on what night and things like that. Then you see some old boxers come in.
Yeah.
and it's sad. It's really sad. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
The wrestlers got the plastic hips and the plastic knees. The boxers got no brains, and their brains are gone. Their brain, a lot of them, brains are mush. George Chevalier is about the only guy I can think of that's really sharp and seemed to have retained all his brilliance all these years. But it's a serious thing, and I know for me, I'm just glad that I didn't have to make a living that way.
Yeah. And you mentioned UFC and mixed martial arts, I guess, just in general. And that's something that kind of keeps me from watching it, is when you watch a knockout shot, and there's, like you say, there's a few extras there, you're wondering, like, you know what, obviously that guy's already going to be in pain. Where's that coming out 5 years, 10, 15, 20 down the road? And they pick the guys up, give them 2 minutes to kind of, you know, get them back into reality, and then the guys hug like nothing's happened. NFL, those guys go at it for an hour, head on head on head on head, and you're seeing, you know, the lawsuits that are coming out there with the former players trying to collect on medical expenses and just living expenses, and it's craziness.
Well, I know when, in my case, when I had my concussion injury, it was like, my doctor, I remember he told me, he was, I'm pretty sure your career's over.
Yeah.
It's over right now. And when he told me that, I remember I first said, no, I have to wrestle on the pay-per-view on Sunday. I got a title match. And he said, you can't wrestle. You can't go anywhere. You can't even get on a plane.
Yeah.
And I started to kind of buck up against that. I wasn't going to let him tell me that I couldn't do.
Okay.
And then I just sort of dawned on me, this is the clearest thing in the world. It's like, I only got one brain. You know, I can't go get another one.
That's right.
All the money in the world, you can't buy another one. You can't get another one. And it's the most valuable thing you ever own is your own brain. And I had no doubt in my mind, like when I heard that and sort of took it all in, I knew then like what was at stake. And
yeah.
You know, I'm really glad I stopped when I did. I know I had a lot of people that didn't believe that I was even hurt, or they thought it was a wrestling storyline.
Yeah.
You know, I'm affected in a lot of little ways from my stroke, or my concussion injuries. I have a little bit balance issues. I have, if I jerk my head left or right, really, like if I'm doing a shoulder check while I'm driving.
Oh yeah.
Things like that, where you whip your head around. Things like that are really stressful for me. They give me headaches.
Okay. Nausea a little bit.
Well, just a little fuzzy.
Okay.
You know, you get fuzzy, and you know, there's a lot of people that just have a hard time believing that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're okay. You know, it's like, no, I'm not. And I never will be 100%. But I work around it, and I'm pretty good. I just can't really shake my head up. No more roller coasters.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
Wow. And I mean, there is a stigma related to that. I mean, we all walk through life experiencing stuff like this. I mean, we see your foot. You're telling us it's broken. We can see the cast. You can see it, right?
Right.
And it's not
the
just
brain. The head injuries. You look fine. I remember when I had my concussion injury, and I flew over to Europe for a WCW show. And I remember talking, I think it was Brian Knobs, one of the wrestlers, but nobody believed it.
Yeah.
They were like, you're fine. You're talking to them. I carried on conversations. I had long, detailed conversations about things I'd done that week. And the next day, I don't remember any of it. I don't even know who I talked to. And they talk to you the next day, and they repeat the same things over. You say everything you said the day before, you repeat it all. And it was a very scary time. I wasn't very happy with the concussion. It was very, just really frustrating and fearful. I was really, after about 4 or 5 months of my concussion injury, I started to get kind of scared that this is not going to clear up and dissipate. And I'm lucky that it did. And I know that, remember when Crosby got hurt a few years ago, there was a lot of people pushing for him to come back. And I understood so well. I was like, no, he's got to take all the time he wants. And he'll be fine. You know, maybe if I had some proper trainers and medical people around me the day I got hurt, I doubt it, but there's a chance that if I hadn't wrestled for another 14 or 15 days after that concussion injury, if someone had the brains to just say, this guy's hurt, he's going home.
Yeah.
I may have saved my career and maybe been able to keep going if I hadn't. But I think the continual going on and going on and going wrestling every night I wrestled till I got hurt on December 20th, and I stopped wrestling, I think it was December 14th or January 14th. So I had about 3 weeks of regular matches, and they were really hard. I wrestled big guys that dropped me from high like dropping power bombs and.
I remember that, and I think you might have had a hardcore match with Terry Funk of all
which
people.
was the easiest match of the whole bunch until he threw me in a bin or something like that, and then he threw me in the bin. I got dumped out of the bin and hit my head on the ground, and I remember that. Like, it was pretty safe, that whole match with Terry Funk.
Yeah.
He was really good with me, like an old pro, kind of taking care of me, and they had a lot of props and baseball bats and things that were foam, and like it was kind of a safe way to brawl.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until he threw me in that, it was like a laundry bin or something like that, and ran me up the ramp, and it tipped over, and I whacked my head on the floor again, and that was like, I remember coming back and going, everything was perfect except for that out of the bin thing, But that's kind of how it is, I know in wrestling, there's a lot of guys that can be really safe with you and careful with you, and I was always really comfortable, working all the time and through my injuries with certain guys, but a head injury is like such a different thing. It's like having an egg. You can't drop the egg, and in wrestling, you're sooner or later going to get dropped on your head. Yeah,
for sure. I guess another thing I want to maybe add on to that is with the concussions. Like, obviously, I personally have suffered one in just kind of a freak little softball accident, right? And the thing that I wasn't ready for was kind of a depressed state that came with it, where you're like, man, I should feel healthy. No, I can't describe why I feel miserable. I feel just miserable. But getting into depression, like, obviously you would have suffered that. How about some of the other wrestlers? Was this a big thing going on? Like,
well, I think it's kind of a rare thing, and I think probably, unfortunately, a lot of wrestlers ignore it and keep going. They got bills to pay, and they just work through it. But in my case, I was severely rocked with the concussion injury. And when you talk about depression and all that kind of thing, I was, I don't know if I was depressed, but I know that where I got kicked, as I remember my doctors telling me, I got kicked in the back of my head here. Just sort of behind my ducktail. And he told me, he said, that's your pleasure. That's where when you eat food, it tastes good, sex, all the things that make you feel good are all in that little spot. And I got rocked right on that. That's the whole area got messed up. I got kicked as hard as I could there. And it was so hard I can remember sitting in my kitchen while watching TV in my living room, and it was a shaving commercial came on. One of the dads was picking up his son, and they had that kind of dramatic music. And I remember I burst into tears in my living room. And I was shocked. I was like, why am I crying over a shaving commercial? And I remember I mentioned it to my doctor when I saw him the next time. I said, should it alarm me that I'm crying for I cry over all these commercials now, or the things on TV that really get me emotional. And that's when he said, it's all to do with where you got kicked, and this is all temporary. And I can remember eating a really nice steak, like at Ruth's Chris or something like that, like a really fine steak, and it tasted like liver. Like, it didn't nothing tasted good. My libido was zilch. I mean, I just had I remember going to a Hitman hockey game, and they won in overtime over Edmonton, which was a big thing for us back then. And I can remember I just stood up and got up and walked out of the building. And I remember saying the same thing to my doctor. Like, it was I'm just recollecting these things that I was talking to him. Like, I go to hockey games and my team wins and I don't even care. Like, I get up and walk out. And he goes, that's all part of where you got hit. And there's different parts of your brain and places that you can get different kind of injuries with concussions. But in my case, I mean, I had a lot. My concussion, the scary part, like even just tying my shoelaces, I'd stand up, tie my shoelaces, and by the time I stood back up, I would almost want to faint. I got my head pumping in my head so much that it was like, and then you get these powerful headaches. I mean, I had headaches for so long. And like I say, you get scared after about 6-7 months of it. You get scared, and especially when people start going like, they don't even believe you're hurt, kind of thing. And when are you going to quit? I remember my manager kept asking me when I'm going to, quit taking a holiday and get back on the road, and it's like I'm no holiday. I couldn't even watch TV in my house. I remember the doctor told me no TV, no music, no bright lights, you couldn't concentrate on anything. It's like you're pretty useless.
Yeah.
You're like, and like I said, a lot of people thought I was at home having a big vacation. I remember wrestlers thinking that I was trying to work, work WCW or whatever, like pick up some pay and take some time off. I've never faked an injury in my life, and as part of my job anyway, unless it was a storyline. But I mean, I never faked injuries, and I never understood why you would want to fake one. If like when you have a real one, it's like a curse. You can't get rid of it sometimes.
Now you're like, I know you're an artist. I've seen a lot of your work. In this period where you're sitting there at home, were you able to draw at all? Like do some of the like basic things you really loved, or?
I don't think I could. No, I don't think I had the concentration.
Yeah.
I couldn't concentrate. Anytime I focused on anything, even reading was hard.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't read, you couldn't concentrate on anything, because you might read a couple of pages and then you got a blinding headache again. And,
yes.
You couldn't listen to music. We made it for a pretty empty life, and I think, like I say, when you rock that part of your brain, and it affects your decision making, it affects your emotions, and I'm just lucky that I got through it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, as soon as I got through my concussion, or I started kind of get back to normal, within a couple of weeks of that, I had my stroke.
Yeah.
I was just getting back on my bike and riding getting my health back and kind of feeling good about myself, and next time I'm in the hospital with a stroke, and I'm going, what's the? I thought it was tied in with my concussion, and it may probably my estimation it was, but you go from bad to worse.
Yeah, that's a deeper hole. It's like every one step forward, 3 steps back, and that's tough.
But I think I've always believed that God gives you things that you can handle.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was the stroke. It was a lousy deal when I got it. I remember being so bitter about it for a long time. And,
yes.
I always compared it to, it's like that movie Shawshank Redemption, where the guy's sanding the boat at the end of the movie. That's how I felt at the end of my career. And it's like, here he is sanding the boat at the end of the movie, and it's like, it's a happy ending, and then he has a stroke while he's doing it. And it's like, that's the ending?
Yeah.
That's a lousy ending. That was how my career is. Like, geez, I worked so hard for so long, and I just wanted to come home, and I was on the road for 300 days a year. That gives me about 50 days to get home, and then you add in the travel days on my 50 days to get home. And I probably had about 30 days a month to be home, and really the time at home was if you probably added it up, it's pretty minimal.
Yeah.
And you make this huge sacrifice for 23 years, and you come home and you suffer a stroke. Is a pretty lousy hand to get dealt.
Yes.
But in saying that, I've overcome so much through the stroke. I had a full-on stroke. I hear people sometimes say, I had a partial stroke, or I know people that tell me they had a stroke and they got some kind of numbness on their face for a couple hours or something. I had a full-on stroke. I lost everything right down the middle, all the way down the whole left side. I couldn't even blink. I couldn't move my eyes or anything, and it was a really scary time for me. But I learned so much through that process. The people that helped me, the nurses, the physio people, the doctors. I mean, I'll never forget it. And I know, when I think about that, and I think of my biggest challenges and stuff like that, is nothing will ever compare with it.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. Well, I'm gonna just change things up. I will talk a little bit something maybe a little more wrestling based right now.
Sure.
Now this is we're in between NFL playoffs going into the Super Bowl, which me as a wrestling fan means the Royal Rumble. Now, you happen to be the first entrant ever into the first Rumble, right? You and Tito Santana. Now, Vince comes up to you guys with an idea, saying, "This is what we want to do. We want to make this a pay-per-view." What happens there in the locker room with the guys? So it's like, here's a new match. How are we going to handle this?
Well, I think the truth is I think of all the pay-per-view concepts, the Royal Rumble was one of the best.
Yeah.
one guy after another, and it's pretty simple to understand, to get it. And there's a lot of suspense in who's coming out next.
Yes.
And it is hard, I'll tell you right now. Any wrestler that goes out and starts the Royal Rumble, that's a long night. It's a lot of hard. I remember, especially that first part, because you got to you have little time to warm up.
Yes.
It's like straight into a full-on, fast-paced wrestling match, and you're going 100 miles an hour right off the bat. And you're like, that first 2 minutes is pretty long, and then one guy sort of wanders out, and then another. It's like you slowly add on. But I think they picked the way the first one, they picked Tito and myself to start, because they wanted two good wrestlers out there to get things going right off the bat.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but I think I was in the next Royal Rumble again. I was one of the first guy again with somebody else, and we went for. I think I had a tendency to go out with and stay out there for quite a long time. I think I was in the first one for 36 minutes straight. Yeah. But it was. I always liked the Rumble concept. It's a good lead into WrestleMania. I think SummerSlam was always a good pay-per-view too. But and the King of the Ring, I thought was a good pay-per-view. But I never was a big fan of the Survivor Series too much.
Yeah.
That five guys tagged up on the corner was always a waste of time to me.
And how was that maybe a general feeling in the locker room? Like, a lot of guys feel that way, or just kind of like, how do we properly tell a story? Because, I mean, early days of Survivor Series, you couldn't go and look at the lineup and say, like, I think he's winning this match. You didn't know. You didn't know how things were going to filter out, right? And it sort of changed.
Yeah, with the Survivor Series, what I didn't like about the concept was you got tagged in, and you never really got a chance to tell any kind of a story. You just had to it was always a rush job. You just go 100 miles an hour until you tag out. And,
yeah.
I always felt that with Battle Royals, most of the time, the Royal Rumble being an exception because it was just interesting the way it was done, but Battle Royals in general and the Survivor Series, it was so hard to kind of tell any kind of a story, or in my case, being a quasi-technical kind of wrestler, it was really hard to. You can't take guys down in a hold or take them over in a headlock or something in a Battle Royal.
Yeah.
Survivor Series, there's no time to kind of build your match, and that's primarily what I was good at. And but I did have one good Survivor Series. It was one of the ones, I think the first one Undertaker showed up in 1990 when Ted DiBiase and I were the last two in our match, and we had a great little. I liked that Survivor Series, and that was one where. I think initially the Survivor Series was able to catch a lot of people's attention, but after a few years of it, it was kind of the same old. Every pay-per-view was kind of the same as the one year before, kind of thing.
Yes, I remember that match vividly. And DiBiase was a major heel at the time, and you almost thought he was untouchable. Brings out the Undertaker and watches him cut most of your team down, and then there's Bret Hart just fighting, and they tell the story about your brother and his car accident, and man, I know everyone in the house I was watching in was thinking, this is it. He's got him. And you and Ted just wrapped up that match really nicely. It was a great match.
And the beauty of that all at those days is I never got to work with Ted.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you knew my brother Dean had passed away.
Yeah.
I think the day before, and so it was a very emotional time for me and my family and everybody. But nobody knew. I don't think even Vince knew.
Yeah.
I mentioned it to Roddy. Roddy knew, and he mentioned it on the commentary. But it was a very, for me, it was a big match.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a really good match. Win or lose wasn't necessarily a significant factor, but I just wanted to have a really beautiful story. And I'll always be grateful for Ted DiBiase and Undertaker and some of the guys that were in that match, Dusty Rhodes, and the guys that they let me shine a little bit and do my things. And
that's right.
That helped actually put me up a little higher for future down the road, because that match did a lot for my my stock.
Yeah.
I rose a little bit, but we did some great stuff in that match with Ted, and at the very end when Ted beat me. But it was a beautiful little match, and I always. It's one of those matches I still take a lot of pride in.
Yeah, I remember you coming out of the pin at the end and dropping, in those days, a massive F-bomb to the camera, kind of like you're just sitting there on the mat, and it's just like, you had him, and it was like Coyote Roadrunner, just you had him. Yeah, and
I was really bad for swearing after I lost. I always thought, if this is real, what would I say?
It's an accent, yeah, for
And
sure.
I was like, if I lost this match the way I just did, I would be so mad. And I was always throwing F-bombs after I lost or when I was really mad.
Yeah.
I always thought nobody really can tell what I'm saying. They can mouth it or think they.
Yeah.
I see hockey players do it all the time because it's real.
Yeah.
That's what you really do when you're mad, get up and say shucks or something,
Yeah. Oh, well.
darn.
So another thing I want to talk about is the commentators, okay? Back in the day, I don't know how much interaction you had with the guys like Gorilla or Jesse Ventura or Bobby Heenan or Vince even. Did you go back, watch how they talked about you? Because I don't remember another wrestler ever that was, a heel and you could choke somebody out, but, and one of the guys is extolling your virtues, but this guy is the technical excellence, right? And it's kind of like, why is he taking these shortcuts? And it's just, there was so much black and white with the commentators, and you were sort of the exception to the rule with them.
Well, I know very much so that, and always remembered and appreciated how Gorilla Monsoon was the one that gave me the excellence of execution tag. He did a lot of little things in the beginning and kind of paintbrushed that story in about my dad and the family and the wrestling background that I had, and kind of gave people a bit of a idea who I was, and made me credible. Gave me a lot of credibility. Another guy was Jesse Ventura. If you watch in the old days, he spoke so glowingly. In a lot of ways, it was tongue in cheek, where he's like always defending the heels and stuff. But he did it such a good job of, and always sort of layering it with truths. Like Neidhart did play with the Raiders, and Neidhart. And I was a provincial amateur wrestling champion.
That's right.
And we had these backgrounds, and my dad was a serious, respected wrestler in the industry. And Jesse, that was, I think, what it was this great respect that they both had for my father. I think, as I remember, my dad stretched Gorilla Monsoon down the basement at the house in 1961 or something like that, and bloodied his nose. And I think Gorilla Monsoon kind of went ape down in the basement.
Yeah.
But he had great respect for my dad. I don't think too many guys took him down and stretched him and busted his nose up in the basement.
Wow. So we got about 90 seconds left here. I got one last question. Nowadays in wrestling, if somebody you'll go to independent shows and they'll make you commissioner for a day. Let's say Vince gets on the phone, on your phone, and he's like, Bret, we want you to come in here. How would you run this company? How would you change anything, or have you realized maybe wrestling, it's swirled off into a different period, it's a different time, I'm gonna just let it be?
If they made me the boss, I would make the titles mean a little more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't keep changing them every 10 minutes, and you would never have champions that were 15-time world champion like Triple H and stuff like that. Back when I won the title 5 times, that was like, massive. 5 times was like, no one is ever going to win the title 5 times. I remember thinking nobody will ever hold the title 5 times. And it's like now you got Triple H and Edge and guys have had the title 25 times and stuff. It's like, it cheapens the history of the title. I would make wrestling more of a priority.
Yeah.
It's a funny time right now in wrestling because the best wrestlers, there's some really great wrestlers out there. Punk, Daniels, Casera, they're really, really good wrestlers. There's some better wrestlers today than there's ever been before, and no one seems to notice. It's not anymore. It's not about the bodies in wrestling. Like the day of Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff and these guys that were all ripped and roided up and Warrior and all that. Those guys are so passé. Like it's moved so far beyond that. Now there's some. When I say technical wrestling, when I think of Punk and something, they're not technical wrestlers. They're like geniuses. They come up with stuff that takes nobody's created fresh stuff like these guys today.
Yes.
They're just not big roided up guys like they used to be. And I'm really proud of the industry today for the quality of talent that's out there. There's some really great wrestlers, and I respect all of them and that are out there. And I have a lot of fans come up and say, I don't watch it anymore. I like it better the way you went back in your day. But for those fans that tell me they don't watch it now, they need to go back and watch it. There's some great wrestling out there.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's we're out of time, so that's where we're going to wrap it up. Bret, I just want to say this has been an absolute honor and a privilege. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's always good to talk to my fans in Winnipeg.
This is Kid Remington for Pro Wrestling 101. Take care.
Okay, stay there, guys, because I need to cut away.